Brought to you by Pentz Homes and part of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast network. This is Lynx Happy Hour. Yo, what's going on? What's up? How are you? Welcome back and welcome in to another episode of the Lynx Happy Hour podcast. The podcast where Lynx basketball is always on special. On today's episode, I am joined by founder and owner of the beloved A Bar of Their Own, Jillian Hiscock. With this show being Lynx Happy Hour, this is long overdue to have a Bar of Their Own episode of the show. Jillian was kind enough to join me today. It's Tuesday, August 18th. We spoke earlier this afternoon. It is now late in the afternoon as I'm getting this up, and possibly while you're listening to it, to talk about all things A Bar of Their Own, all things Lynx. We touched on the season to date so far. Jillian might have the best seats in the house for her season tickets at Target Center for Lynx games. Definitely within hearing distance of one Coach Reeve, depending on the day, depending on the play, depending on the happenings, but had a very good view of the amazing moment after Kayla McBride set the all-time record for threes made in a single game. So we talk about that perspective, just how exciting the Lynx have been a lot, and then also get into what it's been like for A Bar of Their Own since starting in 2024, or just a little over the 2-year mark, and still trucking, still playing to packed houses. We talk about difficulties of trying to be a sports bar that has a million different streaming services available, different channels, and then also just how difficult of a year it's been to be a community member and a neighbor, with just the state of the world, he said, while gesturing at fucking everything. So great conversation with Jillian. I am gonna shut up now, and we're just gonna get right to that. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Lynx Happy Hour, the podcast from Lynx Basketball. Always on special, as you know. Gonna grab just a very quick break here, and then on the other side, my conversation with the Bar of Their Own owner and founder, Jillian Hiscock. Lynx Happy Hour. Stick around. This episode of Lynx Happy Hour is brought to you by Pentz Homes. The team at Pentz Homes has experience working with first-time home buyers, folks selling their first home and buying their next place, to people looking to downsize. With the best tools, technology, and trusted vendors to help with any home project, Pentz Homes is a top choice for buyers and sellers. For more info and to set up a time to meet with Nate and the team to talk about your home buying or selling needs, visit pentzhomes.com. That is Pentz, PentzHomes.com. I am very, very excited about the guest on this episode of Lynx Happy Hour, the owner and founder of A Bar of Their Own, winner of so many different awards, but of course, most recently named country's best local sports bar, from according to USA Today's Reader's Choice survey. Those readers know what they're talking about. It is, of course, Jillian Hiscock of A Bar of Their Own. Jillian, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
For sure. It is Tuesday, August 18th, as we are chatting. Lynx are coming off a win against the reigning champion Las Vegas Aces, in between where they play a game against the Valkyries on the road. One of the toughest stretches of schedule of the season, and they just keep on winning. What is the pulse check over there on this Lynx season for you so far?
It has been absolutely insane in the best way
Mhm.
possible. I think that, we've certainly seen the fandom of Lynx grow since we've been open for 2.5
Mhm.
years. And this year is by far the most excitement we've seen. We are filling up for every single game, whether it's a home game or an away game, which is really exciting. And fans that have been around forever are tuning in, and a lot of new fans,
Mhm.
which is super, super fun to see.
Of course, that is what we like to see. We got to talk about because the name of the show is Lynx Happy Hour, and we're talking about a bar of their own. The pregame happy hours for home games even look like some of the best deals in town. I know if you're going to the Lynx game, you're heading down to Target Center. It's like, okay, I'll just stop by somewhere across the street or whatever. But just like looking over some of the social media posts and some of the deals. The pregame party at a bar of their own for home games should not be slept on. What are kind of the specials you guys have to get people to come over to Seward and spend those precious pregame hours with you guys?
Yeah, we always do some kind of drink discount, whether it's $1 off or if there's beer on special that week, and then we always have food deals going on for folks. Really wanting to make sure that folks know that yeah, we can avoid downtown price increases that a lot of the
Yep.
places downtown have to have, and so we have some flexibility to do some really good deals for us up in Seward, which is just a couple of miles away from downtown.
Yeah, that is a hop, skip, and a jump. It's not hard. That's when kind of all the media stuff is going on. So us writers can't probably get over there. And but I might stop by for an NA or something
Eh,
on the way to
We
work
got
one of these
we
days.
got lots of it.
For sure. I guess just on the links so far, it's they're 29-7 as we're sitting right now. In my inbox, right before hopping on with you, Olivia Miles named Player of the Week again. Just I know it's hard to single anything out, but just kind of what has been. Do you have a game or a moment, or has anything sticks out to you so far as kind of when you're looking back on the 36 games that they've played, I guess kind of what jumps out to you?
For me personally, the game where Kayla broke the record was
Oh yeah.
just the 3-point record was just insane. I mean, we kind of where my seats are during the Lynx home games are kind of at the end of the Lynx bench, and we felt right
Nice.
away we're like, dang, she's on one today. And then by the end of the
Mhm.
third quarter, we're like, she's gonna do it. And there was just something really special about that game that was fun. Kayla's been a huge supporter of the bar and spends
Mhm.
a lot of time at the bar, so it's been really fun to have her shining this year and finally getting some of the deserved recognition that she needs in her 13 years in the league. To be performing at the
Yep.
level that she's performing is just absolutely insane. And so that one sticks out for sure. But I mean, you mentioned Olivia Miles. I mean, it's just impossible to not just be wowed by her consistently. And just how seamlessly she's fit into the team has been so fun. We held a draft party at the
Hmm.
bar the day of the WNBA draft, and we did a drawing of or a bucket where people could put in what they thought the Lynx were going to take with the number 2 pick. And we only had 2 people in the entire bar pick Olivia Miles.
Really?
Yeah, and I just like I think back on that all the time where I'm just
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, like we had no idea. Cheryl knew, of course Cheryl knew.
Yeah.
But I think fans were just totally caught off guard by how incredible she is and
Hmm.
how easily she's fit into our system.
Yeah. That was such a wild night. I knew that's kind of how I recall it too. I was covering the draft party that, the Lynx had that night, and I think uh Janelle McCarville came up and was,
Yeah.
talking with Sloan Martin in front of the fans for a bit, and not tipping the cap at all or anything, but just whoever it's going to be, they're going to be good. It's going to work. And yeah, it's just kind of like trust Cheryl. And I remember the reaction to it. It was a good reaction at Target Center. But you could tell a lot of people were, should we take Lauren Betts? Should we take Awa Pham? Should we
Yeah.
trade back with the Chicago Sky? Because that always works.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, but yeah, even like I was like, that's gonna be fun. But I'm not, trying to front like I knew this was coming because no one did except Cheryl, as you mentioned. Um,
Always Cheryl.
I want to ask about your seats a little bit because I think you get a really good perspective then being that close to the bench where they have us. We're kind of in the corner and we can kind of look on it, but the basket stanchion, normally like someone texts me like, "Oh shit, did you see Cheryl go crazy?" And the basket stanchion is like exactly where she likes to stand and yell at the refs, so we never see that. You can, if you look at the media section, you can see us like kind of turning and craning our chairs a little bit. But especially on a day where like Kayla McBride is doing what she does, and she had that, just very, passionate moment where she gets the ovation coming out and is on the bench for a little bit. How cool is it to be that close to, you know, her like kind of, taking that bow on the bench?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the cool things I think about being in the arena and especially where our seats are is to be able to kind of see those off-camera moments that aren't
Mhm.
always, caught. Sometimes they do get caught. And I was glad that that moment between Cheryl and K-Mac got caught because I do think that it really goes to show the level of respect that the players have for coach. Cause I think,
Hmm.
Big Cheryl for everything everything she is, she gets hated on the internet a lot by folks that aren't
Wow.
Lynx fans. And those of us that know that these players just go hard for her and she goes just as hard for them. And I thought that was such a cool moment that got captured. But we love where we sit because we often see a lot of the things that don't get picked up on by people that are just watching the game. There are
Hmm.
literally games where I will be like, for the next 5 minutes, I'm just going to watch the coaches
Yeah.
and watch their interactions and how they interact with the fans or interact with the players when they're coming off the bench or
Hmm.
Waylon giving high fives to whoever's sitting next to her when the free throws are made. I mean, they have all these little quirks that are really fun to watch. But
Hmm.
for me, it's so obvious the level of respect that is on that bench across players, across staff, across coaching staff, and that's one of the coolest things that you hear so many of the players and the coaches talk about the camaraderie on this team and to just be able to visibly see it and how much they have each other's back is so cool.
Hmm.
And it's just it does feel special this year. Like it really, really feels special.
For sure. How clearly can you hear Cheryl?
Depends on the night.
It depends on how mad she is.
Or
Yeah.
excited she is.
Yeah, or excited.
I mean, there's certainly not everything. We can't hear everything, but there are
Yeah. Right.
certainly times that we can hear it, or don't need a lot of lip reading lessons to pick
Yeah.
up on what has been said between the coaching and the coaches and the players. But she is so fun to watch because I've
Mhm.
always said I love watching people who are just passionate about whatever it is they do, and you can tell that that woman is living and breathing excellence. And to have that just bleed into her team and bleed into her bench and the fans. I mean, it's hard to not get caught up into it when you're watching the game. And so, yeah, you catch some Cherylisms every once in a while. We usually get a good view on her shirt before it
Mhm.
goes up on Cheryl Shirt's Instagram. But yeah, we're kind of right in the mix of it, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, you might be the first to see it because when she does pregame, she's in like her Lynx warmups and stuff too. So she always wears
Yeah,
the shirts to the postgame.
yeah,
But yeah, we don't see that until, moments before the game. So
yeah.
that's the incentive to get seats, near the bench. Getting to see the coach and stuff too is fascinating. I always will try and like catch a look. Sometimes I'll like ask, like I'll see like Brunson talks to Nia Coffee after like a play or something, and then a day or 2 days later, I'm like, what was that conversation with me? They're like, Terry, there's a million plays that happened during a game. I have no idea which one you're talking about, but yeah. So you probably have a better seat than we do for that kind of thing. Um, has anything, I guess Miles, we talked about this a little bit, but any biggest sort of surprises of this season so far?
I think that I mean, it's been talked about a lot, I feel like in the media, but I think for me, one of the really cool things is just seeing, before I owned a bar, before I was in the service industry, I worked in higher
Hmm.
education.
Yep.
And I always talked about how the importance of getting the right butts in the right seats in jobs, right? And
Hmm.
how it's important
Yeah.
to make sure that the people are doing what they're best at. And it's been talked about a lot about how Courtney getting back to her natural position has changed the
Mm.
dynamics of this team. And that I think continues to be the thing that just reaffirms that belief for me of like right butts and right seat. Like
Yeah.
Courtney made it work last year at PG. She made it work, but like getting her in her natural shooting position has just changed the floor for us. I mean, it's absolutely changed our shot opportunities and it's made us really a lot more cohesive across the floor and given us so many more opportunities that we didn't have last year. So yeah, I mean, I think that bringing in a true point guard, whether again, people thought, would it be AZ? Would it be Olivia? Would it be whoever it might be? Like bringing in that true point guard has really just opened up options, I think, for our
Mhm.
vets to fall back into their natural positions and really find their groove.
Mhm. As a fellow recovering former higher ed professional, I really appreciate that. And definitely, yeah, I never had that exact wordage, but that would have, I think, that would have saved some time in a past life. We don't need to get into into that though.
Another podcast.
Um, Obviously, this year has been, filled with a lot of, fun and great times. I mentioned just the latest award that you guys have gotten, but kind of you go to abaroftheirown.com and go just through that press list. It's, a bunch of things. You guys have gotten so much well-deserved love from the great publications locally, and now nationally as well. Obviously, this year has been a lot and hard. I had a thought or a few weeks ago when it was before the Indiana game, and that I hate to call it a rally because that's giving it too much credit, but all that had been, formalized and it was out there. And within seconds, I saw, support transgender athletes sign making party at a bar of their own. And I'm just like, we just need to have like these bars just running everything. It would be better. But and just going back to, January and stuff, it's just there's been so many local businesses that have stepped up to like help us all, take care of each other. But a bar of their own certainly has always done that. And I guess kind of when something like that happens, is it just like you guys all just sort of like snap into place right away, or just I mean, I worked several years in higher education, like how to organize. But just I guess, like talk me through, the role of helping cultivate and protect community that a bar of their own has had, because that's not really when you're like applying for a job as either a bartender or taproom manager, that stuff's not really in the job description, but it is part of what you guys do.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I mean, I think that I have a really hard time separating my personal values and beliefs from my business values and beliefs, for the
Mhm.
better or for worse. And I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head in that when our community needs us, our staff is absolutely inclined to figure out ways to do that, and whatever feels like the most authentic way for us. So we're not going to dip our hands into every single thing that comes across our plate. A, because we can't, and B,
Right.
because we really want to stay authentic and true to who we are. But our community has brought so much love to us that we feel a certain amount of responsibility of doing that protection and even just creating that safe space for people. One of the things that we have absolutely found is that, especially during all the ice activity earlier in the year, I absolutely understood the business owner's perspective of like, this is risky. Like, are we going to participate in this strike? Are we going to do that? Like, are we alienating customers? Are we, bringing in more customers? And what we found really was by being so loud and proud with where we stand on what some people think of as controversial issues, to me, they don't feel
Mhm.
like controversy. They feel like general humankind care. But that has really increased loyalty among our customers. That has absolutely
Mhm.
brought people to want to support us more because we're willing to put that kind of stuff on the line and we're willing to take those risks. But to us, it feels like who we are as a business. We know that
Mhm.
women's sports is inherently political. We needed legislation to allow women to compete in athletics. And so
Mhm.
the ability of, shut up and dribble is just not a reality in women's sports. And I think as a longtime Lynx fan and season ticket holder, we've seen that through so many
Mhm.
iterations of the Lynx throughout the years. And so for me, it feels like the most natural thing in the world that we would, of course, be being a safe third space for folks in the queer community, and that we would
Mhm.
be a place for folks that need, whistles during the ice occupation, and those kinds of things we are our community and our community is us. And so when they need things, if we can use our space for those purposes, like that's absolutely how we want to use our business and use our space. We're doing another thing this weekend for the Aliveness Project, which is a local
Mhm.
nonprofit that's been really drastically hit by funding cuts by the federal government, to the point that we have members of our community who can't receive their like their life-saving medications. And so we're doing a drive this weekend for these folks that just need to have access to medication and need to have access to food supplies, and those kinds of things. Our guests have come to expect from us, and
Mhm.
it's a level of responsibility that I think I didn't anticipate being as much of a part of the business as it's become. but we realized very quickly how needed it was, to
Hmm.
even for folks to just have a place to look at, to see like, well, how are they managing it? Not that everybody's
Hmm.
going to mimic exactly what we're doing, but if we can kind of help show this is how you can be an active member of a community as a small business, like we're happy to take those risks. And we don't get it right every time. I
Hmm.
think that's the other thing, is that a lot of times small business owners are really afraid of making mistakes that are going to cost them their business. And to me, I've always been a very transparent leader. When we mess something up, we're going to tell you we messed this up and we learned, and here's how we're going to do it better next time. And I think that level of transparency has really resonated with folks in the community, especially as we've been navigating such uncharted waters in Minneapolis for the
Hmm.
last 6 months.
For sure. And I think when hearing from friends who don't live here, in especially in January, but even since then, I remember one friend just being like, "How did you all get like whistles right away?" And it was just like I went into like every dude, every business, walk into any store, like my coffee shop had it, the skate shops have it, the dive bars have it, every venue, you like basically went out and said like this is a safe space, like what resources do we need, and they just figured it out and got everything,
Mm-hmm.
and was providing anyone who stopped in like no like no like purchase necessary, like that was kind of referring to it as a silver lining is just absolutely not what it is, but like I will remember being encouraged at like, okay, like look at this response to what
Mm-hmm.
these fuckers are doing, and look at what has been readily made available just by people who care,
Mm-hmm.
from
Yeah, I mean,
neighborhood to neighborhood.
I think the blessing we had in Minneapolis is that we have such a really strong kind of underground mutual aid organizations that are happening year round that people don't know. So mutual
Hmm.
aid kind of became sexy during the ice
Yeah.
occupation, for lack of a better word, right? But like, I think we were able to respond so quickly because there's so many folks, and in particular, so many Black and brown women
Hmm.
that are doing this work year round, that we were very easily, I mean, for us, I was like, we are not recreating any wheels. I know there are people doing this work already. I just want
Yeah.
to say, what do you need from us? Oh, you need to have a collection point. Boom, here you go. We can be your collection point. Oh, you need to have some access shared about, mutual aid funding that's going on. Great. We have a broad social media following. We're happy to share that. Like, I think that Minneapolis does a really good job, not always, but especially during that ice occupation of tapping into the resources that are already existing, the people that are already doing the
Hmm.
work. And so, I'm always wanting to give credit to those folks that are doing mutual aid still to this day. And we're doing
Yeah.
it long before the ice occupation, because they allowed us to really pivot pretty quickly. They already had connections in the community. They already had trusted spaces. And we were able to just activate those folks that were already doing the work on a much broader scale.
For sure. And then it brings more awareness and more people, doing it and not seeing it and the recreation of the wheel kind of thing. But it still can elevate to a point where you're doing it differently in,
Year
ways that,
round.
serve different needs.
Yep.
Kind of this, and there was you did a great interview, with the Island of Discarded Women podcast that I was listening to earlier this year. That's a great. I'm going to link to that in the show notes here, so we don't have to go through, the whole history that you went through very eloquently there. But I think not recreating the wheel, but doing like kind of like our wheel is kind of the creation of a bar of their own. In that interview, you talk about seeing what the sports bra accomplished in Portland, and this moment where it's like, yeah, this should have always existed. We shouldn't have had special legislation to allow women to compete in athletics, as you mentioned, but we did. And kind of that moment of you being like, yeah, there should be a women's sports bar here. And it's like, all right, well, I guess I've got to start it if it's gonna happen. So, um, can you just walk me through a little bit kind of how the, genesis of a bar of their own uh came to be, and ended up in the spot where it is?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head in that Jenny Wynn is the OG. Well, she'll always
Mm.
be my OG, the founder of the Sports Bra out in Portland. And she started in 2022 when I was actually working for the Minneapolis Women's Final Four basketball tournament that was taking
Hmm.
place here in Minnesota. And so I was in this women's sports world, and then this women's sports bar opened, and it was kind of this like oh my gosh, like this is really happening. Like this is taking off. And I really truly did think that somebody else in Minneapolis would do this because we're such a
Hmm.
strong women's sports community. We're such a strong restaurant and foodie community.
Hmm.
But I think ultimately taking the kind of risk that we took to open requires almost somebody from outside of the industry because you
Yeah.
have to really think completely differently about everything. I mean, we think differently about not only what we put on our TV screens, but how do we populate our menu with options for women's sports fans? What does that look different? Not saying
Hmm.
that men aren't women's sports fans, but our demographic is different than Max Industrial or something like
Sure.
that, a different sports bar in town. So, how are we really making an intentional space for women's sports fans, knowing that they tend to lean more female, younger a lot of times, but also what we like to call our Title IX elders, the women that
Hmm.
walk into our doors that couldn't compete in sports athletically when they were younger because of Title IX legislation had not passed. And so, really trying to just cater and create a space that myself as a women's sports fan, but really the many, many other women's sports fans that I had met throughout my life just never felt like our fandom mattered.
Hmm.
Because you'd go into other traditional sports bars or what we call men's sports bars. Um, and just not see our sports and our teams represented. And I think that even now to this day, 2.5 years in, I'm still trying to say like, hey, so and so, like you can do this too. Like we don't need to have exclusive women's sports bars in order to show women's sports. Like
Hmm.
any bar can do this. And that's really what we want to happen is that we want to have more eyes on women's sports is the goal. And so people often ask me, like, when are you expanding? When are you getting a bigger location? Are you franchising? And I'm like,
Yeah.
all of that makes me very tired to
Yeah.
even think about. But I would love to see other bars, and we're starting to see it. We for sure are seeing other
Mhm.
bars advertising. We're showing Lynx games. Kayla just gave a shout out to Whitey's Saloon the other day in a post game
Yep.
interview. And the next day they were like, we're showing the Lynx game. And I was like, there we go. Let's go.
Yep.
Let's keep it going. So getting that momentum. I love getting texts from people that are like, I'm at fill in the blank, some random
Mhm.
bar, and the links are on, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that is so
With
cool because
with
3 years
sound
ago,
sometimes.
yeah, three
Yep.
years ago, I couldn't pay people to turn it on.
Hmm.
And so I love seeing that broader expansion and that broader interest is really helping grow the sport because that's what we need. We just need people to see it because once they see the quality of the product on the court, they're
Hmm.
obsessed with it because it's great. And that was really what a bar of their own was trying to unlock was just creating that dedicated space where not just the links, but any of the women's sports that we show can be prioritized so that people can learn more about them and help this momentum continue to go on.
Hmm. I think it was the way my mind works. I think it was game four of the 2024
Oh,
finals. The game four they won. I mean, we lost the Lynx lost, and of course, so it's
game
hard
four
to.
was crazy.
But that wasn't game four when BC hits the free throws to seal it. That
Yes,
was a bar of their own, Cheryl Shirt, right?
it was. It
Yes, and
was.
I asked her about a bar of their own after the game, and she had a great answer that I did not re-listen to that in preparation. I should have, bad Terry, but I because I remember a big thing about sort of that like playoff run was I live in Northeast and I'm friends with people at the bars in this area, and I would see all the social media posts like from before the playoffs were starting, like, all right, Lynx watch party tonight. And it's like, okay, like this is spreading and catching. And yeah, I think about this a lot. When I lived in Portland, I was watching the final game of the 2011 WNBA finals. I won't name the bar. It is still open. Otherwise, good spot, but had a bad moment when a dude who worked there just came over and like asked if he wanted me to change it. And I'm like, no, I'm clearly watching it. And he assumed that like something else was on ESPN prior, and then it just like got left. I'm like, nah, like I want to see if the Lynx can sweep the dream. But thanks for checking, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, that's been awesome to just see that, in this space. Um, so yeah, Sports Bra 2022, a bar of their own came to be in 2024. Notably for me, filling the space left vacant by Tracy's Saloon, which was a beloved spot, but as you meant, like it's a very tough industry when you're trying to open anything that like even like has a proof of concept, I guess. Like
Right.
you had mentioned that the small business loan that you guys applied for was denied because there was no proof of concept, even though the sports bra had already netted like 1.2 million or something. Um, but filling that space, which had been, which was a beloved bar that sat empty. So it's not. I'm very happy that the Tracy's dry rub stayed on the menu as a nod to the past. I didn't know this until last week when I was in Portland that the sports bra space had been a couple of things, but had been a gay bar called Jacques for many
Yeah.
years that had been closed. So it's just kind of
Yeah.
interesting to look at like lineage of buildings and stuff in that regard. Obviously similar to sports bra, first day open, line out the door, hours to get in. Bartenders are bringing fried pickles to people in line. Just when you think back to what that day was like, kind of like what was sort of like best memories or the things that stick out the most about that day and being like, okay, like we can do this and the audience is here for it.
Yeah, it's so funny because I'm so glad that we hired a photographer for that day because I
Mhm.
remember so little of it.
Right.
Because it was all just such a blur. I mean, we had been going absolutely grinding nonstop leading up to that day. We had actually hosted the Lynx President's Council the night before for
Mm,
like a pre-opening. And so I had left the bar the night before at like 11 p.m. And then I had an NBC News interview at like 6 a.m. the day that we opened. I mean, it was like I was completely operating on vibes, like
yeah.
no sleep. And so it is really, really funny for me to go back and look at those photos because I'm like, I don't even remember that person was there. There was somebody dressed up in a Rockford Peaches outfit. I don't remember that. I mean, like there was
Yeah.
just so many things happening. But honestly, more than anything, not even just that first day, but really that first like 2 months was just like the immense amount of joy
Mhm.
in people's faces when they walked in. And we still see it now when people come in for the first time. You can automatically tell when it's somebody's first time because they kind of walk in and they do this like big
Yeah.
eyes moment. And it's so cool. And I think that that's one of the things that like I still get weepy about when I think about the fact that, my mom could only be a cheerleader when she was a high school student. I mean,
Sure.
and I'm one generation removed from Title IX, and to see the joy on so many people's faces, really spanning generations. I love
Mhm.
seeing again our Title IX elders come in and just get emotional thinking about the fact that something like this exists. And on the flip side, I love seeing the younger generation bring in their kids, and so
Mhm.
their kids are never going to know a world where like women's sports aren't on TV. And that, like, when I think about the generational change that is going to bring about by just having those spans of exposure, people think like, oh, are we hitting the peak of women's sports? And I'm like, no, we are literally just scratching the surface.
Mhm.
Because there are still so many challenges in women's sports, none of them which are trans athletes, just to say that out loud.
Of course.
Um, but there's still so many challenges in women's sports, and I think that this younger generation starting to expect more and more and more, that like my generation is still kind of used to crumbs when it comes to being a women's
Mhm.
sports fan. Like I talk about this a lot with like merch, right? People just expect like, oh well, we're going to create a shirt and it's going to be enough, and people are like, yeah, that's cool. And now you're starting to see like, yeah, but we want merch that reflects me or this or like they're really starting to ask for more,
Mhm.
which I think is so great. Is just we're seeing this like increase of demand, increase of individuality. We're seeing the impact of market purchases from women's sports fans. I mean, there's new studies that are coming out, I feel like every week, talking
Mhm.
about how women's sports fans are just controlling the market. In terms of how they use their auxiliary spending and where they're spending their money when it comes to sports. And that case for investing in women's sports just keeps getting reiterated and reiterated and reiterated. And I think the more and more that people realize that, the quicker they will
Mhm.
be to jump on. I was just talking to a corporation last week and I was like, if you have any way to locally contribute to a women's sports team, do it now. Because in
Yeah.
5 years, that price is going to be so much higher. That get in
Yep.
now because we're literally just starting to scratch that surface. And that's what gets me really, really excited is just thinking about, thinking about the growth we've seen in the 2.5 years that we've been open with still a lot of inconsistent resources spends. To
Mhm.
think about what that's going to look like as we are starting to see these spends start to equal out more, like it's just going to be crazy what the growth is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years.
Hmm. And obviously, it's a Lynx show, and the Lynx have been, kind of the main story in women's sports in Minnesota, basically since Cheryl Reeve got here, and for good reason. But it's been incredible to see the growth, like around, other leagues and stuff. Like I know the Minnesota Vixens have been here for a long time, but they're being, on TV and watch parties, and shout out winning the championship. I know you guys just had that championship party for them. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I think you mentioned this in one of the like interviews you've done, but just that if you're not a basketball person, what's your sport? It's represented in this town, and there are places you can go to, find your people, like-minded
Yep.
people it's not even just like, I hate when people say like four major sports or whatever, but it's not even just like the sports you're like super familiar with. Like Twin Cities Gemini, like is a celebration of the women's rugby community, which has been active in this town for years and years and
Ever.
years. But it's just like the access point is now, so
Yep.
much more wide reaching. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, so name your sport, you can find it.
And that's what I think is also really cool about our spaces that you mentioned. You get, yes, I mean, our biggest sports, no question, are the WNBA and the PWHL. Like that's
Mhm.
pretty consistent. Obviously, when March Madness comes around, that gets really big too.
Mhm.
But we actually find that some of the smaller niche sports almost bring in more rabid fans because the idea of being able to watch them in community in a
Mhm.
space together is such a foreign concept that they come out of the woodwork. So,
Yeah.
we next week we're doing something. We have one of our Minnesota Strike players, our women's professional ultimate frisbee team, is
Mhm.
going to be in the PUL All-Star game. We're going to host a watch party, and I can guarantee you we are going to be full for people watching one strike athlete playing an All-Star game
You're right.
because it's so cool to be able to watch their person in a
Mhm.
public setting without feeling like they have to be streaming it on their phone from their couch in their
Yeah.
basement. I mean, it's like that experience, I think, is something that women's sports fans are still coming to become more normal for them. Is that for
Mhm.
so long, that community viewing experience was really limited to major men's sports. And now we've been able to say, like, nah, we can make that happen. High school dance competition, let's go.
Yeah.
Ultimate frisbee, women's baseball, you name it. Like we
Mhm.
can make that kind of community viewing experience happen. And there's just something magical about being in a space with people that care about the same thing that you do.
Mhm.
And we've seen that come to fruition so many times in just really, really cool ways.
Sure. This is maybe a little more, you just mentioned um PBWL. Um but so like inside baseball, but as someone who's worked in a bar before, I would think about like, okay, what do you do when, there's X amount of TVs and X amount of customers and requests for games and stuff, and it's like, okay, well, like this TV gets these channels, like getting every TV to like either like talk to each other or whatever, like it's not always easy in a bar. So like, what has been like, I guess, what time of year is sort of like you need to sit down with the schedule beforehand because there's just going to be so much happening, and we've got to make sure we're using the screens in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, well, first of all, it starts with an incredible AV system. So shout out to my
Mhm.
guy Andrew over at Radiant Sound. He pulled together
Right,
an incredible AV system for me so that
right.
we can independently control all of our TVs. We have different access for all of them. But at any given time, we can have 6 or 7, I guess, technically input points into the bar's TV system. And
Mhm.
so it is a matter of figuring out what's streaming on, some random app,
Mhm.
what is going to be on cable, is there something on YouTube? And I think that is the piece that is like a fun challenge for it. There are some members
Mhm.
of my staff that are like, I'm not touching the TVs, like
Yeah.
not going there. But we've gotten a lot better at it. I think my wife does an incredible job of putting together our TV schedule for us every week. But I would say this summer is by far one of the times where it's just like, again, you mentioned it, right? We have Aurora, we have Vixen, we have Gemini, we have Lynx, we have Strike, we have
Mhm.
all of these things happening at the exact same time and often on the exact same nights. Not to mention that we have NWSL going on, we have
Mhm.
WPBL going on, we have all of these different sports. And so we certainly every day kind of go through and say, like, here's what we think people are going to come in for. We've been around long enough that we kind of start to get some ideas of what's going to bring people out. So we kind of every day have a little bit of a highlighted, these are the games you should absolutely focus on. But we also love, like I was just talking this week with a mom who's got a daughter playing as a freshman. She's from Minnesota, went to Minnesota high school and is playing on the UCLA volleyball team. And she was like, are you
Oh
going to be
yeah.
able to show UCLA volleyball? And I was like, absolutely. And so
Yeah.
she's like, oh my gosh, we're going to come in. I mean, like those kinds of things are really fun to be able to make that happen for people, to be able to watch their daughter on a TV at a bar. When that kind of thing just wouldn't have been possible when I was in college.
For sure.
But that, I mean, the media deals of it are the blessing and the curse of all of this, right?
Hmm.
Like we know that the media deals are where a lot of the funding comes from. And I continue to push for things to be on more mainstream media. Because that's how we get eyes and especially get new eyes on sports,
Hmm.
because casual sports fans aren't going to download 27 apps in order to be able to watch sports. And so I always
Right.
am trying to get more and more of our sports on those mainstream cable services so that we can get more eyes on them. I'm honestly super nervous about the Women's World Cup and Netflix being the exclusive host of it. Is I'm like, man, what bar that may or may not know if they're going to get fans for the Women's World Cup is going to pay whatever astronomical price it's going to be to get the Netflix package to be able to show the Women's World Cup in the
Yeah.
bar when the Men's World Cup was on Fox and it was easy to get and everybody could do it. And I'm
Hmm.
like, we're already putting the women's tournament on a disadvantage by making it on this, what's likely going to be expensive streaming service that people are going to have to buy specifically for the tournament when we
Right.
didn't have that for the men's tournament. And so there's still those disparities that I think people don't always think about. They hear like Netflix is the exclusive thing and everybody gets really excited without really thinking about the behind the scenes piece. And,
Hmm.
is your local dive bar down the street going to pay $500 to show a 1 month tournament?
Right.
And I don't know what the price is going to be yet, but I mean, those are the things that I'm really getting to is like, we still make it really hard to watch women's sports.
Hmm.
Our goal is to always make it easier for folks. And we need to make it easier for casual fans in their homes to be able to watch sports without having to seek out places like us. That's the only way we continue to grow.
Right. Because it is different. Like to get Netflix when you're a bar, it's different than just like paying for it with your
It's
personal
supposed to
account.
be
Yeah,
different.
it's
Not
supposed to
everybody
be
makes it
right.
different, but we make it different.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
basically any streaming service that you buy, you check that terms and condition box that nobody reads,
Hmm.
but we read. And one of the things in there is almost always saying that it's intended for personal use only, and commercial use is not allowed. And so, as a bar, I
Hmm.
can't legally show that without getting written permission from those streaming services. And so
Hmm.
that's an extensive part of our process. People will come to us and they'll be like, oh, we have this thing. It's just online though, so you can just show it. And I'm like, it's not that easy, but give me the information and I'll look into it and see if
Yeah.
we can make it happen.
Hmm.
And there are some places that buy personal packages and make it happen, and that's on them. But we know that we really want to try to do it right in order to make sure that people know that these media companies know, like, we have demand. We have people that want to watch this. Because
Hmm.
when we first started opening, when we first opened, I was contacting companies and saying, hey, we want to show this in their bar. And they're like, why? And I was like,
Hmm.
because we have people that want to watch women's sports. And they were like, really? And I was like, yeah,
Right.
yes, this is a thing. And so really trying to change that understanding of still those access challenges for women's sports fans.
Yeah. And I could talk about this for hours, but just as someone who I went to Oregon State, which got left out of, with the Pac-12 dissolving.
Yep.
And so we went through this thing of like, oh, like we need to negotiate our own media deal now. And everyone was like yelling like, oh, if it's on the CW, no one's going to take it seriously. And so now I feel like the new Pac-12 has things and I'm just thinking about like, okay, I might need to be at a bar they're on actually weekly to watch, Oregon State women's soccer and Oregon State women's basketball. Um, and because they're going to be good again, and it's just it's unfair, but that they did that same dance of like, is it worth it to be on like a network that you don't like immediately think of sports? But I'm just like that it's linear television, you can get it anywhere.
Look
Like,
at Unrivaled.
yeah,
Unrivaled True TV.
right,
Like, I had never watched True TV in my entire life
right.
until Unrivaled was on there. And now it
Hmm.
became one of our most popular channels in January and February when we were watching
Yep.
Unrivaled 3-on-3 basketball. So yeah, I mean, I do think, people, And it's funny because Wolves fans, I feel like, are getting a taste of this now with the Dawson
Yeah,
announcement, and people are freaking out. And I'm like, welcome to the women's sports fans world. Like, we've been having to do random apps and streaming services for our entire lives. So,
mhm.
little sympathy for having to
Yeah,
understand that experience, but it does. I mean, I think it does. It clearly impacts viewership, and the more that we can get it on linear mainstream TV, the better, and the more growth we're going to continue to see.
for sure. Having looked up what you said, Women's World Cup, and that's Women's Soccer World Cup next summer, which will
Yep.
be which will be on Netflix. So get Netflix if you don't have it yet. They'll probably make it more expensive. But for FIBA, because we'll have a lot of links going over to
Yep.
Berlin. Do you know what? I haven't even looked what the broadcast for that is yet.
It's kind of all over the place. It really
Okay.
depends on the game. So most
Mhm.
of the US games are going to be on, I think it's USA. I'm just pulling it up right now. Nope, TNT.
Okay.
TNT, True TV, HBO Max will be where most of them are. So again, think about that. Like, True
Right.
TV is now being picked up by FIBA World Cup.
Right.
Um, and I think Unrivaled was probably their first foray into women's sports. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, so most of their games are going to be on True TV. It looks like the World Cup gold medal, third place in gold medal games on the 13th of September are going to be on TNT and HBO Max. So,
Okay.
yeah, so we'll have a lot of fun stuff coming up for that. I think I had somebody last week that was like, again, we're getting new women's sports fans from all different
Hmm.
walks of life. And they're like, why did the Lynx have such a big break? And I was like, oh my gosh, get ready.
Right.
I'm like,
It's not a break for basketball. Yeah.
all of your favorite players just got split up to all of their home countries, and they're all going to
Hmm.
be playing each other.
Yeah.
So, and I
I'm
think that's going to be another one of the really cool things this year, especially with that massive growth of international players in the WNBA this year, is that people are going to be so excited about so many different teams. Like, I'm
mhm.
low key nervous about France because, like,
Oh
we've
yeah.
been seeing what the French national players have been doing in the WNBA,
Yeah.
and they're going to be gunning for us, you know.
Hmm.
And so I think that's the kind of thing that is great. Like, 2 years ago, nobody would have known who Janelle Salon is, and now everybody's like, she's going to be a machine on the team, and it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
she's been good.
She's been doing this.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that time because I'll actually get some time off, and so I might be bellied up to the bar when it's Czechia versus Belgium,
Oh my,
and watching Alishka and Tony going head
oh
to
my
head. That's gonna be so
God.
fun.
Yeah, and there's going to be a handful of games. The time zones always make it a little bit tricky. So there's going to be
Sure.
a handful of games. We won't be open for all of them. Like, one day, I think the Lynx play at like 7 o'clock in the morning or something on a
Yeah.
Friday. And I'm like, I don't think we're going to open at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Friday for that game. But we're working on that schedule and figuring out when we're going to want to show. We'll be able to show most of the US games for sure. But yeah, it'll be a really, really exciting time. And again, just great to have more eyes on different players around the country. You think about, I can't think of her name right now, but the new player that the Aces just signed, this little
Oh,
three
my
point
Yamamoto.
assassin.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, never had ever heard of her, and now I'm obsessed
Hmm.
with her.
Yep.
Like, I think that those kinds of exposure is just going to continue to help grow the game.
Yeah. I had the most like okay reaction when she banked that three in against the Lynx on Saturday night. There's another moment in that game where they had like a run too, and she saved like there's a ball that like got
Oh,
deflected
almost
like
went out. Yeah.
yeah. And but it like went all the way into the backcourt, but Yamamoto recovered it with like the shot clock at like 5. This was in the second quarter, I'm pretty sure. And just launched like a 40-foot three as the shot clock went off, and it good luck. It drew rim. I was like, if that goes in, I don't even. We're talking about a completely different game after that because that would have been
Uh-huh.
big momentum shift. But
And her
yeah, so
super awkward shot,
mhm,
but it works for her. So whatever, do your thing. Do
yeah,
your thing.
definitely. That's gonna be a very exciting time. Don't want to I want to be mindful of your time, but we still haven't talked about all the awesome work that you've done with a fund of their own. So
Mm.
for anyone who may not be aware of that, this thing, I believe it was last summer or so when you guys started this to support, girls and women's, in sports, this discouraging trend of youth sports participation being in decline with just prices are getting gargantuan across youth sports now. Um, but just the things that you've been able to do, and just like what you might have planned for the future that you might be able to talk about real quick.
Yeah, I mean, a fund of their own was kind of always like this back burner idea for me with the bar. Just having worked in nonprofits and having been a youth athlete myself, I kind of knew firsthand what that would be like and what those needs
Hmm.
were. But the response has just been unbelievable. We've been so fortunate. Not surprisingly, that the community has showed up with resounding levels of support. We're
Hmm.
actually very soon, by the end of this week, announcing we're doing a kickball fundraising tournament here in September
Ooh.
to bring some folks together and just really try to have some community building around some little fun competition. But we just completed our quarter 3 application review and are just being able to support some incredible athletes in our community, both in the Twin Cities and greater Minnesota. Just a lot of them just want to keep playing. We're not
Yeah.
talking about like crazy things. It's like this kid wants to play on her 6th grade basketball team and her family can't afford the travel basketball costs. Can you help? And
Hmm.
it's like, that's exactly what we want to do. There's so many opportunities, I think, locally for um, opportunities for expansion within the women's sports, like rec league, right? Like, I think that
Hmm.
we just keep seeing that the sports are getting so competitive so early, and a lot of kids just want to play.
Hmm.
And parents, unfortunately, a lot of times ruin that, by making it, why are we doing 10U national championships? Like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. There does not need to be a 10U national anything.
No.
And so, I'm really such a strong proponent of like, how can we just help people keep playing? And it doesn't end with girls, right? Like, we have women that have reached out to us that are looking to participate and re-engage in athletics, but now don't have any equipment. And as single
Hmm.
moms, don't have the ability to just go out and buy new cleats and gloves and everything to be on a softball team. And it's like, great, how much do you need in order for us to help you outfit yourself to be able to go back and play?
Hmm.
Those kinds of things are just so important for not only for youth, for their leadership development. I mean, the Tucker Center locally does such incredible research around the skills that women in particular learn via athletics, and so we want that to be a thing for girls. But we know it's there, that needs to be continued to be stoked as women become older, and getting that kind of community and team experience is such an important thing. So being able to play just a small part in that has been really, really fun. And we have a lot of really exciting things coming up in terms of, again, we have a fundraiser coming up on September 19th that we'll announce this week. Our application for quarter 4 just opened up. And so if folks are needing funding from now until the end of the year, they have the ability to apply for that funding now. And just donors have continued to engage. One of the fun things we've been able to do to connect the bar and the nonprofit too is um, you can now purchase a side of sports at the bar. And that's
Ooh.
it's a $5 donation right to a fund of their own. And so it's a way to help support our mission and continue supporting the community locally, right on your bill at a bar of their own.
Yeah.
So that's been really fun to have people see that and engage with that, because it's great for us to show people like, this is staying in the community. This is work. This is money that's staying directly. We're an all volunteer nonprofit. We have
Hmm.
literally no overhead at this point. So we're just pouring money back into our community and keeping girls and women in sports. So it's been really exciting, and I think there's some really fun stuff ahead of us.
For sure. Are you open for volunteer applications at the moment?
It's a great question. We are actually just talking about that with this event in particular. I think as we're looking into our second full year, so we officially incorporated in November of last year. And
Mhm.
so we're coming up on kind of our 1 year. And in that, we're doing some long term planning into next year and thinking about what volunteer needs might be available. Because we have had people express interest. And right now, we didn't really we're still kind of building a lot of things, but now that we've got 1 year underneath our skin, I think we're really trying to figure out how can we continue to engage members of the community without it just being through financial contributions. And so we'll be looking for some volunteers for the kickball tournament, and then I think moving forward into 2023 or 2027, we'll be doing some more opportunities for volunteering.
For sure. I just know Lynx fans activating for, good causes. Definitely.
Huge.
Yeah. Where do I sign? Is that they're
Yep,
they're they're ready right now. Well, Jillian,
absolutely.
thank you first and foremost for all of the work you do in our community, making it a better, safer place for so many people, and also thank you for being so generous with your time and for taking, a full hour with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you again to my honored guest here on this episode of Lynx Happy Hour, Jillian Hiscock, a bar of their own in the great Seward neighborhood of Minneapolis. If you haven't been by now, make it a point to be there. If you're in the cities or not, if you live in greater Minnesota, make the trip. I love the wings. The wings are great. If you're not a wings person, they have so many other options on that menu as well, and always have women's sports on. It's a crown. It's one of the jewels in the crown of our incredible community. So thank you again, Jillian, for just starting a bar of their own and for coming on this podcast to talk to me about it. I really appreciate it, and our community appreciates you. Thank you, as always, to Nate Pentz and the entire team at Pentz Homes. Sorry, Nate. I'm just going to keep that in there because I'm transparent. Thank you to Firehawk Construction. Thank you to Homage Apparel. Thank you to my colleagues at Hitting the Hardwood, especially Mitchell Hansen and Andrew Dukowitz. Please like and subscribe to all the stuff we've got going on at Hitting the Hardwood. Join the Patreon. It's always a great time to join the Patreon. I know Mitchell just put a bunch of stuff up there because we saw Olivia Miles news of getting Player of the Week, and then in that same breath, we found out that the 2027 All-Star Game is going to be in San Francisco. Never a dull moment here in WNBA land. So thank you to all those folks as well. Thank you to those who have joined the Patreon, but especially and most importantly, thank you, dear listener, for rocking with me for another episode of Lynx Happy Hour. I sincerely appreciate you. Have a great week, everybody. Peace.